Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Todd Talks. And Todd Talks, people listen, hopefully. So, it is the 25th episode of Todd Talk. I'm happy to have been able to do 25 episodes, and I hope you enjoyed them, the ones that you've seen anyway. Um, I'll continue to keep going just because I love doing this, and I think it's fun. So let's get right to it. Today we are doing the prediction for the upcoming death battle of Ken Masters versus Terry Bogard, or also known as Street Fighter versus King of Fighters, or Fatal Fury, depending on which version you want to take with Terry. So this is actually something of a special rivalry because this is one of the few times where technically these characters have actually fought before because Terry and Ken, along with various other Street Fighter and King of Fighters characters, were actually put into a game called Capcom vs. SNK. And in that game, Ken and Terry, who are very similar, were seen as rivals. So this is very interesting. But of course, you can't depict what happened in that game as the end result because of various things, storylines, and obviously us playing as the characters. So this is kind of interesting for me because we just had a Street Fighter fight with Cammy. Of course, she faced Sonya Blade and lost. And now we have Ken, who I even noted in I believe in my Cammy reaction as one of the characters that could come to try and save Street Fighter. But I'm not sure now if that's going to happen. So, for those who don't know, Ken Masters is the one of the main protagonists of Street Fighter. He's been in every Street Fighter game, to my knowledge, and he is the best friend slash rival to Ryu, who is obviously the main protagonist of the game, arguably the most recognized character of the game. Yeah, he was trained by Gouken, much like Ryu was. Knows pretty much every move that Gouken taught Ryu. They're very similar in fighting styles. Um, but unlike Ryu, he tended to do things more his way than Ryu. Ryu was much more of a focused guy. He believed in sticking to the basics of the Ansatsuken fighting style, which is what Gouken taught the two of them. And he rigidly states that while Ken, being American, which I'm sure was a dig at us, is much more flamboyant in his style. He's more creative. He likes to change things up, which is actually one of the reasons why his fighting style has evolved throughout the games. Because originally, Ken Masters was just a clone of Ryu with one different move. But as the games went on, as his story developed, he became a much different character right up until Street Fighter V, where he has vastly different moves than Ryu, which is good because we don't like clones. We don't need that. That being said, you could argue that he hasn't accomplished as much as Ryu. Ryu has actually won a World Warrior tournament. Ken has won martial arts tournaments all over, and he has won I guess you could call it the U.S. equivalent of the World Warrior tournament 3 times in a row. But that's not the same as the World Warrior tournament, so keep that in mind. Uh, Also, unlike Ryu, who always fights with everything he has, you could argue that Ken doesn't in most cases because he has a family. So he's a little more, especially in the later games where he actually has a son. So it's actually noted that he doesn't fight as intensely as Ryu unless he's facing Ryu. So there you go. And because of death battle rules, they're going to make it that these two characters have not met. So you kind of have to wonder if the Capcom SNK game will even be considered canon at all or a reference to it. So, because this isn't like when Batman faced Captain America and they referenced that comic where he said, that he could be him, because that was one kind of canon. This is different. So, as for Terry, Terry Bogard from A Fatal Fury, King of Fighters, he, okay, SNK totally ripped off Capcom. It's well documented. Okay, they made it so that they basically took all the characters from Street Fighter and put their own little twist on them to make them look totally new. Terry Bogard was just that. And if you look at the backstories of these guys, they are incredibly similar. Um, Terry and his brother Andy were born without parents. They and as Boomstick hilariously noted, they didn't even have a last name until they met their foster father, whose last name was Bogard, and he started training them in martial arts until he was killed by Wolfgang Geese, or was it Geese Wolfgang? I don't know. Sorry. He was killed by Geese, not Goose. Geese, Boomstick, Geese, and I love that joke. That was a really funny joke. I'm sorry. And so, to avenge their foster father, both Andy and Terry went on a decade-long training mission, if you will, to learn the skills necessary to defeat Geese. What happened was that Andy went to Japan, not unlike what Ryu did, even though Ryu was adopted by Goken, but they trained in Japan. But unlike Ken, who also went to Japan at his father's behest, aka ordered his son to go get trained, Terry pulled a Ryu and just wandered the world. He mastered numerous martial arts, including kickboxing, kung fu, and street fighting, hilariously enough, and learned his own moves, mixed them all together, and became a very powerful fighter. And so about 10 years later, the brothers came back and joined a guy named Joe, who was a Muay Thai expert, clearly a rip-off of Sagat, and entered the King of Fighters tournament, which was run by Geese. And Terry won. In fact, he actually defeated Geese to get his true revenge. Then the next year, the next tournament, I should say, was run by Geese's half-brother Krauser, and Terry actually won that tournament again and beat Krauser Duso. And then, and another thing, like later, he actually beat Geese again and actually saved the guy from dying, and to which Geese knocked his hand away and died until he came back later. So, yeah, Terry is incredibly powerful, and so is Ken. But who's got the edge here? I'm gonna give it to Terry, and I am totally ignoring everything else. You know, the previews and everything. I'm once again trying to go by research, even though the previews totally tell me that Ken's gonna lose. I am sorry, but here's the thing: in Street Fighter lore, Ken, okay, in Street Fighter lore, which is, as you know, very convoluted and very fixed in some ways, his biggest victories have been against Ryu, and that's fine. Ryu is an incredibly powerful character, but he has had much trouble with all the other, what's called the boss characters. He couldn't beat M. Bison, although it's stated in Street Fighter 4 he technically did, but it was never shown. It was just implied. He was actually there when Akuma killed Goken in one of the games, and when he tried to fight Akuma, he got taken down in one shot. And as you know, we go on in the series, this hasn't really changed. Whereas in Fatal Fury, Terry has beaten the endgame characters. He beat Geese twice, and then he beat his half brother Wolfgang, or sorry, Krauser. Yeah, Wolfgang, Geese, Wolfgang, Krauser, right? Who are the bosses? He did that on his own without help. That kind of just tells me something, because as I'm being told by fans of the Fatal Fury, those guys are actually tougher than M. Bison and Akuma. And when you think about that, that's saying something. Okay, we're talking Tatsuo Inohara and Psycho Power, and apparently Wolfgang Geese and Krauser are tougher than them. But even if let's just say they're on par with them, that means that Terry has beaten guys like Bison, like Akuma, on his own. Another thing is the Ansatsuken, Assassin's Fist, was Goken's personal take on karate, kempo, judo, and mixing them all into one style. And it's just that one style. But with Terry, in his 10 years of wandering, he actually mastered separate martial arts and then combined them together. So instead of being taught a style that's all of them mixed into one, he learned them all and then mixed them into one. Do you see the difference there? So this tells me that technically, I think Terry is actually a more skilled fighter than Ken, and his abilities, if you look them up, though they may not be as numerous technically as Ken's, uh, he has more flexibility. He's actually known for his adaptability to fight an opponent and actually gain advantage through fighting them by realizing where their weaknesses are. He has this aura sense where he actually can tell where people are. So in theory, he could always know where Ken is. And then of course he's got his power moves, which are his fiery knuckle. He's got his power geyser, power wave. Uh, I th I think those moves will definitely counter the Hadouken, the Tatsumaki Senpuyaku, the Shin Shoryuken, which is actually better than Ryu Shoryuken. You know, moves wise they're equal, but style wise I think Terry has the edge here, and because of that, and he's got some other moves which I think will counter Ken's. He's got an anti-air move, which I think can counter most of what Ken does. He's got some great mixed combo moves, as does Ken, of course, but I think his edges him out. And I think what's important here is that Death Battle, again, analyzes canon, all canon experiences. And because of that, based on what was shown in the games, I think Terry has the edge here. Now, there is a wild card that fans aren't sure is going to happen. It's called Violent Ken. Violent Ken was part of the Capcom vs. SNK games, where a character from Fatal Fury King of Fighters, Orochi, actually exuded, I guess, this kind of dark energy which Ken absorbed, which turned him into like a murderous killing machine, which was called Violent Ken. This is kind of like his version of the Satsui no Hado, if you will. And that Ken is supposedly much, much tougher. But I don't know if Death Battle will use it because it may not be technically defined as canon. We'll have to see. If it is used, it could give Ken the edge. Could. I don't know if it will. But it's important to keep that in mind. Ken cannot use the Satsui no Hado. Ken cannot use the power of nothingness. That was for Ryu alone. So unless he has Violent Ken, those are his super. He has no super modes. He has super moves. He has no super modes. Okay. So, yeah, again, this is really a toss-up. This is, I think, even more than certain other matches where you can literally have a coin flip. This is a tough matchup. But I have to give it to Terry. I think he's a better fighter. He's accomplished more than Ken, even though, again, Ken, yes, he's won those martial arts tournaments in the U.S. He has not won a World Warrior tournament, which means he has not technically won the best in the world. He's the best in the U.S. That's a difference. Yes, he's beaten Ryu, but those weren't to the death. Those were to let's see who's the better man. And Ryu has beaten Ken just as much. Okay? But he's never beaten M. Bison definitively, to my knowledge. I don't care about implications, or if it was implied, unless it says in the story that he beat Master M. Bison. I'm not saying I can't say that he did. So he didn't beat M. Bison. He didn't beat Akuma. I don't really know. According to the stories I read, he really hasn't beaten high-level bosses like them in his storylines. That was never his purpose. So I don't know. But with Terry, he's beaten the end bosses multiple times on his own. He's entered and won a very incredible amount of tournaments, and he is the king. He is the king of fighters, period. And even and he's been in actually every single King of Fighters games. That's 13. So he's definitely got the experience. He's got the moves, and we'll just have to see how it plays out. So I am officially casting my vote, my pick. Okay, I am saying Terry Bogard will beat Ken Masters in this death battle. Death battle fight. Death battle! So, with that very exciting note, high note, uh, I'm going to end this episode of Todd Talk. I thank you for watching it. Be sure to let me know what you think of who is going to win, Ken versus Terry. Again, if you've watched it first, do not comment on who did it. It happened to me once. I wasn't happy about it. Okay, I wasn't happy. So, let me know who you think. Let me know why you think they'll win. And then stay tuned because once the death battle hits this Wednesday at the time of this recording, I will wait a few days and then I'll make my reaction videos next weekend. So, I thank you for watching. If you made this far, I know you were listening, and I will see you around.